Pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the Bastrop City Council will hold a regular meeting on February 9, 2016, City Council Chambers, 1311 Chestnut Street, Bastrop, Texas, to consider the following call to order. I call us to order. We have a full quorum present, all members here. We are pleased tonight to have with us a veteran of our armed services, Mr. Terry Haggerty, present to lead us in the pledges to the flags. If you are able, please stand. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Terry. We also have the honor tonight of having present with us Chaplain Jimmy Cottle of the who represents the chaplains for our police force. They are a volunteer corps that do a wonderful job for our citizens and in support of our finest officers. Chaplain Cottle.
Thank you, Mayor. Join me in prayer, please. Lord God, we come to you tonight and give you thanks that we do live in a country where we have a say in our government, Father, where we elect our officials, they work for us. Thank you for these people who work for us here in Bastrop, Father, to help make our city a good place to live. Father, give them wisdom tonight as the decisions need to be made, that they would make the right decisions for the best of all the community of Bastrop. And we give you praise, honor, and glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chaplain Cottle. We appreciate your service and your presence tonight. We have no presentations or proclamations. I have not received any citizens' comments. This would be citizens wanting to speak on something that is not on our agenda tonight. You know, sometimes folks will come forward and tell us what they think. And sometimes it's something that makes me go suck my thumb. Sometimes it's great ideas for the future, but apparently none tonight. We have, do we have any updates on the Comprehensive Planning Steering Committee, Kay or Doc?
I believe before Mike was out ill, he was working on some chapters to update us. Is that still where we are, Mike?
At staff meeting today, Melissa is in the process of calling the next steering committee meeting together.
Thank you.
Mike, Kay just mentioned you were out ill most of the week. That results in our not having a city manager's report. But is there can we let you mention
yes,
something
there's one item.
this
is an announcement,
Okay.
only. If you recall at the last meeting, we tabled the Piney Creek zoning change and was requested that the council provide their concerns to me to forward to the developer any concerns you might have regarding that development. We're having a special workshop session next Tuesday night to workshop that project and begin talking about our bond issue coming up that we wanted to put together. To date, I've only heard from one council member, and in fairness to the developer, I do need to get your concerns to him before the end of the week, or there won't be any sense of us having a workshop on that.
And I know y'all, or at least I hope y'all want to make a decision. This has been going on for a long time, so you need all the information you can because you need to make a decision soon. Gary?
Yeah, I just suggest that it not only be a workshop, but that we are able to take action.
Yes, I'm going to have it both ways, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could go ahead and take some action.
Yes.
Okay, we move to Mike. We're glad you're back with us. I know this is your first day back at work after suffering for quite a while, and we miss you when you're out.
I miss y'all too.
Want you to take care of yourself. Under the consent agenda, we have a total of 8 items.
I have an announcement, Mayor.
Well, I guess we're supposed to post these things We have an item coming up that talks about that. We've had some advice from the city attorney about that, and I know Mike, making an allowance for Mike, I don't know if I should make an allowance for other people. I think what he said was pretty important in terms of follow-up from last week, but you got any advice for us, JC? I need you to use the mic if you can.
If it's something that's known in advance, it needs to be posted on the agenda.
So what we need to do is to learn to get advance notice about announcements.
Yes, sir.
So I guess
Right.
I'm going to say no, okay?
Okay, this only came up Sunday, so we didn't have time to get it on the agenda.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to follow JC's advice and say you can't make the announcement. Is that correct?
If it's known in advance of the preparation of the agenda, it needs to be posted on the agenda. If it's something that's late,
So if I
late
want to make an
published,
announcement, I just don't tell anybody about it until Saturday. Is that correct?
that's not the intent.
But that would be the case, correct? Okay, you're on, okay?
Okay, I noticed at the Super
I'm sorry,
Bowl.
do you want to make a parliamentary thing?
Well, I was just going to remind you that last week that when I asked to make announcements, I was denied that privilege, but go right ahead.
Well, let me give you a tennis analogy. When you're playing tennis and you find out you made a mistake, you can't go back and redo the points, but you try to correct it going forward. So if I've abused you or misrepresented the truth last time, I apologize to you, and I will hopefully I'll have you sitting there to remind me next time I make this mistake. It's okay?
Okay, Sunday I watched the Super Bowl, and I saw that we actually had an H-E-B commercial that had been filmed in Bastrop, Texas. And it was excellent, and I wanted to be sure and thank the Film Commission as well as H-E-B for thinking of us when they made that commercial and helping bring some economy to our town while they made that commercial.
And
Thank you.
a big thank you to Debbie Moore who made it happen.
Anybody else have anything you didn't tell me by Friday that you want to announce? I think that's the way the rules work. The consent agenda, it consists of 8 items. Anybody have an item they would like to pull off for individual discussion? Item A5 is approval of the second reading of an ordinance of the City of Bastrop amending the zoning ordinance, Chapter 14, Section 36.2, zoning use charts and 8.3 definitions regulating the movement of existing building structures, adopting a conditional use permit process. Thought I heard somebody talking. Adopting a conditional use permit process within residential zoning classifications for relocation and rehabilitation of such moved buildings, amending Chapter 3, Building Regulations, Article 3.16.002 and 3.16.006, providing a serviceability clause and providing an effective date. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda? No?
No.
You want to pull something?
No, you or not?
I do not.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to accept the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Second. Moved by Councilmember Goodall.
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa. Would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Gilliland? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Schiff? Yes. Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally?
Yes.
Thank you all very much. I posted a couple of items regarding a potential joint city and YMCA recreation building project. There's been, it's a pretty major deal and something unusual and different that we're doing. The city will have to approve BEDC expenditure of the project. From their perspective, they will have a hearing 2 weeks from yesterday. But in the meantime, I wanted to take this public opportunity for anybody that has any concerns, questions, or just support, or anything they want to say about that project. As I said, it's a very major one. It affects a lot of people. It involves a lot of money. So is there anyone, Kay, we don't have anybody, Ann, we don't have anybody yet.
Well, we
From-
have one
on
for
this-
C1.
Okay, well, C1 is an opportunity for Mike to talk about what's going on. This one is a public hearing where people can get up and say where they want to on this subject, so I'm
I
assuming
would
this-
like to thank the YMCA for pulling dill from its lovely community garden and providing it for some of us. Thanks.
Not sure if that's related to the building or not, but maybe it is. Does, I'm going once, going twice, going 3 times? Okay. Item B2 is a similar opportunity for people to talk about the city's proposed contribution, a project that Mike is working on in terms of working out a contract with the Y, joint project for a recreation building and related requirements. Is there anybody here that wants to give the council any advice about that? All right, we're going to close those 2 items out. Move on to item C1, consideration, discussion, and possible action on a contract with the YMCA. Should have Mike's name on this, I guess. I mainly wanted to give Mike a chance to report to us if there's any progress on that project.
Yes, about a week and a half ago, I did meet with the representatives of the Y. And then later that week, they forwarded me a contract that they have with another city and have asked that I develop a set of deal points that have been discussed up here at the podium and forward that to them so that they can start putting together at least a rough draft of a contract for the council to look at. We did discuss that this would be funded out of the general operation of the city, so it'd be viewed as a capital lease, and they understand that. And the other aspect that they told me is that the best that they may be able to get as far as the site is concerned will be a letter of intent from the property owner that they're dealing with. And my response to that comment was the council will have to evaluate the strength or the weakness of that letter of intent to see if you feel comfortable going forward based upon a letter of intent. And I know they're working very judiciously to get that. So I don't know what it says at this point, but I just wanted to give you the forewarning. That's what they told me to expect. We're both been trying to pull this together. We did give them until March the 1st, but because of the way Tuesdays fall, our next council meeting is March the 8th. So I did tell them that we would put this on for the March 8th council agenda. It gives them a few more days, gives me a few more days to pull everything together so that you'll have the complete package when you go out, when you come in here on March the 8th or 9th to make a decision.
I think the date, I mean, you're the one that's going to have to figure out about the timing, so appreciate. I'm sure we're going to be agreeable to that.
Week is not going to hurt me. If it was 3 weeks, I'd say yes, but we really are going to have to make a decision on March the 8th or 9th, whichever that Tuesday is.
Kelly?
Mike, without going into too much detail on the contract terms, can you explain how we can finance this through the general fund, and if we are obligating future councils, how we get around that, or how we deal with that?
It will have something in there to the effect that the appropriation of this will be dealt with in the appropriations of the development of the annual budget each year, and it'll be up to the council to appropriate that. Capital leases are a form of financing that have been used. I have traditionally used them for purchase of fire trucks because normally I've never seen a council give a fire truck back for public safety reasons, and they're a short-term lease. They're only about 5 years, whereas this is 20 years. And of course the Y asked, well, what happens if the council doesn't pay for the 5th year of the fire truck? I says, well, the fire truck goes back. And they says, well, then I guess the building comes back to us. I said, I guess that's what would be the case.
Okay.
So that would be part of the contract.
Yes.
The risk they would run would be covered by their ability to repossess the building and land.
Right.
Is the land part of this deal, or does it go to the Y? Does it go to the city? Do we know yet?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
That we don't know. That's what, that was the one thing that I really stressed that had to be covered in this letter of intent and, or whatever they're going to work out. I mean, they're trying to get it committed to, but they did say they may have a fallback position by just presenting the council a letter of intent. And I said, well, again, as I said earlier, you're going to have to, that's why I want to give you time to go over the materials, because you're going to have to study that letter. If it comes back and not as a commitment, but a letter of intent, you're going to want to study that very carefully to see the risk or that's associated with that letter of intent, because the site is critical if we're going to shift the 1.6 from Plan B back to the Y.
Is it possible to own a building on somebody else's land?
I guess if we have the consent of the owner, it would be.
Well, let me say that I would speak vigorously against any agreement that gave us a building, but not the land that it was sitting on.
Right.
I mean, I think it makes no sense, and I don't think anybody in this community would agree with that.
Okay.
So, I mean, if that's not to me, that's I don't get to vote, but that's a deal breaker in my mind, and I can't imagine the citizens not protesting that.
Okay.
Would you say a little more about, one of our deal points was they would, have to find a building and the building site agreeable to us.
Right.
And you said that they may not have a firm
Commitment.
hold on that. So the letter of intent would be, can you give us a little more detail on what that is compared with the actual?
I have seen letters of intent that just say something to the effect that we're very interested in this project and we'd be willing to pursue it further once more information becomes available. Or it may be a letter of intent that says the executive director has approved the site. We're just pending approval of the board of directors. I mean, it can be that broad. It's because I don't know where they're at in their negotiations to succinctly answer your question, Mayor.
And so the risk that the council might run at what I think you're saying is the best case scenario for the Y at this point would be that we're hoping with some degree of certainty in our minds, or their minds, that this will actually happen,
Right.
but no guarantee. And that's probably the best we're going to see by the time the deals are
That's what they
presented.
indicate.
Okay.
That's what they indicated to me in the meeting. And like I say, once I see the letter of intent, I will also give you my opinion about how risky I think that letter of intent
Okay.
is.
So I think an assessment of that risk would be very helpful.
Okay.
Crystal Smith. Would you please come to the microphone? Tell us, restate your name, and you have 3 minutes. The Mayor Pro Tem will wave a 30-second sign at you when you have 30 seconds left.
Yes, sir. My name is Crystal Smith. I've been part of the YMCA for 16 years. I'm originally from Amarillo, Texas. I come from a negative, impoverished, background when I was younger. I was actually approached by a science teacher who asked me, would you be interested into going to a workout class at the YMCA, and it's a free membership. So I did. And YMCA is just not a workout center. It's also for the youth, especially if you come from poverty background. And I also have like a list right here. It shows you like all the classes they offer for youth. And instead of running the streets, causing trouble, I was part of the YMCA. They had like groups for kids for after school to play pool, help each other with each other's homework, do workout classes, and I think that the YMCA for myself was a big life change for myself. And I see a lot of kids, especially around here, running the streets, and I think that if we had something like this for them here, they probably would have a chance in life being something better than where they come from, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's from the YMCA, but I've had a lot of positive influences because of the YMCA. It's just not people in poverty, it's people from all different lifestyles. And I went to college, did something different with my life, and I believe that a YMCA here would actually help other kids with the same background be successful in life. So, sorry, I'm a little nervous. This is the first time doing this. But yeah, so I just want people to know that YMCA is just not a workout center. It's also for youth. and it's free for kids that are in poverty. And when I was in college, I only had to pay $10 a month. So, you know, sorry. But yeah, that's about it. Just want to tell you that it's just more than just a workout center. It's for the youth, and I think it can make a big difference in our community. So, but yeah, it has it on their website, and these are all the classes they offer kids, all the way 3, all the way up to adults. So.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. I appreciate especially your mentioning about how much it meant to you because you didn't have resources in your family.
I didn't.
Because one of our deal points on this thing is that why...
It's very positive. And the people, like I still have friends that I grew up in the YMCA with, you know, their parents are doctors, and I come from the ghetto, you know what I mean? And to have that friendship still since I was a kid, and you know, my school, they didn't help you with homework, but when I went to the YMCA, they had like a little room where you played pool and read books, and people would, you know, the kids would help you with your homework and stuff. So I think it's a bigger picture than people know it to be, you know what I mean? So
Right.
My son's part of the YMCA, he does all the classes, so I keep him, you know, busy. So I just want people to let them know that's just not a workout center, it's for everybody, for families, you know, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what I was starting to say, that one of our deal points is that if we want the Y to provide for us some assurance that people like you that live in our community are taken care of at a no-cost basis. That's very important to us because we won't have control of it once this deal is made. We would have control if it was a city recreation program, but we don't. So that's part of our deal points, and you have made that point in an anecdotal, vivid way for us, so thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, thank you, Mike. We'll appreciate the work that you're going to do, and we know it's short notice, and we know it's rushed for everybody. We appreciate your work on this.
You bet, and the Y is working.
They're working hard, I know, and we have renewed our possibilities here, and we all, I think, hope it works out.
Okay.
Under new business items, item D1, Mike reported to us desire to provide for us to provide some direction to him about LED, and so and we also talked at the retreat about the fact that we need to have concise language we can deal with. So I don't think we have this up on the board, but I wrote a resolution that would be available for anybody that wanted to move it or to modify it or something so that we could get this direction that Mike is asking for regarding LED. And so the resolution calls for him to go and get the thing paid.
And just so the council is aware, I've already will be completed this week, the topographic survey of that whole area, which will be critical to putting the parking lot in. So that first step will be done by the end of this week. And as the second part on the 921 lot, I do have some preliminary concepts for the council to look at if that's the direction you so choose to go.
So does anybody want to follow up on that? Means I can't make a motion.
Can I ask a question? Yeah.
Mike?
How are we going to pay for that?
We have bond funds. We used more bond funds than we had anticipated in the purchasing of the advertiser building. And now that I've got the topographic survey completed, I can now develop a cost estimate and compare that against the bond funds. This goes all the way back to the 2003 bond election. This was actually one of the bond ballots that was authorized. I suspect we may come up a little short, but especially the bond did not envision creating a common meeting place at the 921 lot, but I think when you see what I've come up with, it will be a great addition to the downtown.
Does this include restrooms
Yes, ma'am.
that are accessible okay, so people can come from the parking lot through the gathering space with restrooms on each?
We've got a variety of options we're looking at on the restrooms.
Okay, but they will be there, that's what I want to know.
Let me say, if anybody wants to make a motion,
I got
it
a question.
doesn't include anything about restrooms. So it's all about the parking lot. So if anybody wants to make a motion and wants that to be a part of it, you need to add that to it. Gary?
I do have a question. What did you finally determine as far as the repairs that need to be done to that wall?
There's a variety of repairs that we can make, but it looks like the most inexpensive if we're going to make it a common meeting place, is to put kind of a tin slant roof up at the top that will provide shade for the people staying around in there, and will provide protective cover to the wall.
I think we should consider putting a roof over that entire building.
It does, in essence, when you see the whole plan, I've kind of got it in phases, Gary, depending upon how much each phase is going to cost us. And I was just waiting for this direction, and then I will break it all down for you and then get your input.
Okay, so would we be approving your moving forward on that, or are we just talking about the parking here? It doesn't read, to me it looks like it's parking and repairs.
Well, it says make necessary repairs to the vacant lot, but I'm going to bring that back to you because you haven't seen those.
Then I would move that we instruct the city manager to only do the paving at this point and come back with the plan for 921.
Second.
Yeah, let me point out that this, if you move this motion, it has nothing to do with the vacant lot at 921.
It says it.
Well, it says so that he can continue.
Yeah, we can't use, until we make some structural repairs.
It is, he told us that he didn't want to build the parking lot until he knew what we want to do with the gathering place. The question is, my suggestion is that we get the parking lot done. This is exactly what you're saying. But why don't you just phrase the motion as you want to? I was trying to get something that would
I thought I just did that.
Okay, can you repeat what you said exactly, and we'll discontinue attention at what's printed on the agenda for item D1, and we'll go with what Gary's saying exactly.
Okay, well, I just moved that we instruct the city manager to move forward with the paving of the lot around Alley D.
And Kay, is that okay with your second?
Yes.
Okay, Willie?
I think you answered part of my question about the vacant lot itself. From the discussion I'm hearing, it seems like we've almost already made a conclusion that it was going to remain a vacant lot. And I thought there was discussion at one time that we'd come back and see if the city wanted to sell that lot to somebody for a business. I didn't know that we'd already decided to keep it a lot for a meeting place.
No, that's been my understanding. We had not made that decision, and that has been the discussion. But it will play into how we ultimately configure the parking lot. And I can do it without it, but if we're going to make the building as a common space, it would be better to include that or know that up front as we design the parking lot versus if we're going to sell it off.
All right, then.
I'm going to go with Kelly as next, and then Gary.
So, Gary.
I'm sorry, then Doc, then Gary.
Gary, your motion is to go ahead with paving the parking lot,
Yes.
but we don't know how much it's going to be. We don't know what the shortfall is going to be. Do
No,
we want
I
to
don't
know
know
that
that.
first before we move to actually spend the money?
Now that I've got we'll have the topographic survey done because we have some significant drainage problems on the buildings that face Chestnut Street, that the water gets trapped, and we've had several complaints of people getting water into their buildings. Now that I've got the topographic survey, we can do a preliminary design. I will give you a preliminary estimate and the shortfall before I do anything else.
So does
Then
I'm going to go with, did you get your question answered?
I don't think so.
Okay, can you keep trying with Mike, and then I'm going to call on Doc and then Gary.
They can go ahead.
I'm letting Kelly finish her question. She's not satisfied with the answer.
I'm just, do you think this is going to be a significant shortfall, and where are we going to, what fund will this come out of, and how much will it be? Are we voting to say go pave, or are we voting to have you come back with a proposal?
My take is I'm not going to do anything until I come back to you and say, you've instructed me to pave the parking lot based upon the issues that we have to take care of, which are going to be utilities and the survey and some drainage issues out there. Here's what it's going to cost. Here's how much money we have left. And either going to be a shortfall,
right,
or there's going to be a deficit. And then if there's a deficit, how do you want to cover that deficit?
So Gary, do you still want to?
I will withdraw my motion and just suggest that we
I've got, I know she asked you a question, but I've got Doc that wants to talk, and then Gary that wants to talk, and Kelly has had her question answered. I'm going to call on Doc.
Can I just?
I'll release my time so they can get this resolved, because that's what I really would like to know too.
Mike, you want to?
What I would like to say is to adjust Gary's motion to move to instruct the city manager to develop an estimate for paving the lot in Alley D and bring that estimate back to the council for their review and consideration.
And I'll
That's my
second the
motion.
amended motion.
Okay, so Mike has the language, and before we vote on it, we'll have him repeat it. Doc, you want to go ahead and speak? I'm going to call on Richard Smarsik. Help me out. Smarsik?
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city manager. My name is Richard Smarsik. I'm a downtown business owner and one of the building owners. I am affected by 921. I'm looking for a start date. I'm looking for an estimate. I'm looking for when it's going to get solved. Additionally, LED is of a concern for me also because the flooding does affect my fellow business members, and they've been resistant to getting anything done because of the flooding issues. So again, for that one, I'm looking for a start date. I've been hearing about it for a number of years. I want to know when it starts.
Have you been in touch with the staff about your concerns about the flooding?
Yeah, I have talked to Trey many times.
Okay.
I've talked to Mike many times.
I want to thank you for saying that. We've been working on this for a very, very, very long time. It's time for us to get moving.
I agree.
Gary?
I would just say that now that the 2-foot convert, we had to do the survey to get 2-foot contours out there to address the flooding issues that have come up in and around that area. Now that that is done, we will move forward, and I would hope to bring back within 60 days an estimate for the council to look at for the parking lot.
There's your answer.
Sufficient?
Gary?
I've modified my motion, so I'm done.
Other discussion? Mike, would you repeat
Sure.
for us the motion that Gary made?
Mr. Schiff moved to instruct the city manager to develop a cost estimate for paving the lot in LED and bring back that cost estimate to the city council for review and consideration. Seconded by Ms. McAnally.
And as far as I can tell, we're ready to vote.
Councilmember Schiff? Yes. Councilmember McAnally? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa? Yes. Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliland? Yes.
Good.
Thank you all very much. Item D2 is consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding expenditures of legal fees and the possibility of hiring an in-house city attorney and a proposed resolution. The former is by Councilmember Schiff, and the latter is a resolution proposed by me. So, Gary?
Okay, let me start. I got this report at the last meeting that kind of goes through a comparison between Bastrop and some other cities and some discussion on the rates and the costs, and I wasn't too impressed. Where did this report come from?
Ms. Catherine Ray helped me put that together. Catherine Ray.
Okay.
And she can back up all the figures that are in there.
Okay. Was Catherine Ray, how did we initially start working with Catherine Ray?
She's worked for us since about 2007. She's done a couple of wage compensation studies for us, market studies, classification of personnel. She's done council retreats.
Okay. Because I look at what's being spent in some of the other cities. I think I saw here Bernie at $169,000. Anyhow, I see numbers that are substantially less than what Bastrop is paying. I also looked at some of the estimates for the cost of bringing an attorney in-house, and I see on the back page of this $50,000 budget for outfitting an office for an attorney, I think an assistant attorney, and a paralegal. And I see desks at $1,900 a piece with a desk return at $2,500 each. And it just goes on down. Office chairs at $650 a piece. A hutch with a credenza, $2,800. I just did an office for about $2,000, and it's got a desk, and it's got a file cabinet, it's got a nice chair. I think, you know, when you spend $50,000, if that's the kind of money that we're spending for office furniture in the city, I think we got a problem here. And I hope that that this is Catherine Ray's opinion of what you should spend on furniture and not the city of Bastrop's opinion on what should be spent. Also, I look at, there's a cost in here, a one-time investment for a law library of $14,000, and it's my understanding that lawyers don't really use libraries anymore, that they use online services. And I may be wrong in that, but
You got to pay the initial fee to have access to that library, and that's what that initial fee is.
that's an initial fee? Okay.
Yes.
So I was going to say, you know, it doesn't, I don't think they have the typical libraries anymore.
They don't.
Anyhow, what I would like to, I don't really want to go necessarily into action this evening. I really think that we're at a point that we should be seriously looking at an in-house attorney, an attorney that will be here on call for us whenever we need an attorney, that would be a salaried position that we could always have at our beck and call. And I think that, I think that this report is, I think it's kind of a little tainted perhaps. But what I would like to see personally, I would like to have documents of billing reports for maybe the last 3 months of what have we spent these legal fees, these 600 and something thousand a year worth of legal fees, to take a look at where, I thought we were going to get a report on kind of breaking down more where the money was going. I'd just like to see it with my own eyes.
You're going to see that next council meeting.
Yeah, I think that Mike and I have talked about what you're talking about, and I'm agree with you, Gary. I want to see. It's not a matter of how much we charge or how much somebody charges us per hour, which is what we've got. It's a matter of how many hours we're using and why are we using so many hours, and how do other communities get away with spending less money.
I absolutely agree.
So that kind of detail, Mike. We all know Mike's been sick this last week, and I think that he's saying to us right now that he'll get a lot more detail, better benchmarking, how much other cities spend in terms of what they spend it on. I know the item that we have for administration doesn't do us much good. It needs to be broken down in real detail about where are those charges coming from, and also for us to examine something about our community. Do we have a community that's has more need for legal services than other communities, and what is that all about? It's a very broad conversation we need to have, and I appreciate your bringing it up. Mike?
Yeah, you'll see that breakdown by category, and I think at least my preliminary numbers show that the biggest item right now is the city council. And what I'm going to suggest is...
Can I move into my resolution which affects that?
Pardon? And all I'm saying is, one of the things that you brought up at the retreat, rather than having to call all the time, is I was going to switch legal review day from Wednesday to Tuesday, then have it on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month, and then from 5 to 6:30, if you as a council member have a question of our legal counsel, you could come down there, and that time frame would be specifically set aside for you. And if you would let me know in advance, that helps Ms. Brown to be prepared, and we can take care of your issues more expeditiously and more cost effective.
As you all know from reading the council packet, I have a resolution that speaks to that in a somewhat different way. It's an opportunity for us as a council to do what Mike, to practice the discipline, to put the discipline on ourselves that Mike has put on his staff. And that is for us to not call the city attorney directly, but to run it through Mike and run it through his legal review so that we can save some energy, time, and efficiency. And also that we instruct her not to talk to citizens that call in, but to have them contact the city manager's office so that we're not spending the amount of hours she needs to charge us for somebody to call up and just ask her a question. So I will say, as I have said, I have a resolution available if anybody wants to move it. I'm not able to move resolutions, but it allows us to comply with the kind of discipline that Mike has put on his staff.
I would like to see that modified slightly.
Yeah, but it's something to work with, Gary. That's all I got.
Right.
So
the only issue that I would add to that is that that we would put an exception into this resolution if we pass it that says if the issue that we have has to do with the city manager,
You have to bypass me.
that we take exception. If for whatever reason
Sure.
it has an issue, even if it's not directly with the city manager, if it's a city manager's relationship is involved in the issue, that we would be able to go directly, but beyond
so
that.
a third resolved would be, can you get some language?
Yeah,
I would just say if it involves the city manager, then it falls over to the mayor to handle the matter with legal counsel.
I think that's a good solution.
So the third resolve would be that any issue, any legal issue involving the city manager would be presented by a council member to the mayor, who would address it with the city attorney directly.
Yes.
Is that clear?
That's fine.
Kelly?
I have a comment. Do I have to wait till someone
No,
seconds or talk
I'm sorry.
about it now?
That's Gary's motion. Is there a second? Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I put it in the form of a motion, but I'm happy to move
that a
that we
motion or not?
approve the resolution with the third caveat that if it relates to the city manager, all those comments would go through the mayor.
Is there a second? Okay, there's not a second, Gary. So I'll call on Willie. Are you wanting to speak?
Yes, I was just going
And
to...
then I'll go with Kelly next.
I really don't disagree with what your resolution calls for, but I'd like to see when you and Gary were just talking, and Mike, I just wanted to see a cleaner version brought back at the next meeting when he brings his report back and what his findings are, and I'm sure it's going to be probably in line with your resolution, but wait and act on this after Mike's report at the next meeting.
Mike, are you proposing something that would be cleaner than this?
I just might put...
Well, I'm not saying cleaner, I'm saying we need to clean up what y'all just said on this piece of paper, but Mike said we'd be surprised at what we're going to find out that it's probably the city council, so I'd like to see what his comments are going to be.
You'd like to see the report of how much we're spending before you vote on it?
Yeah.
I understand. Kelly?
I'd like to have a further discussion about whether or not the city council can speak to the city attorney directly, or if we have to go through this process. And if so, many of the things that I personally speak to the city attorney about are executive session type materials that I don't think should go through the standard city's legal review. Maybe if we're going to do this, we need a special city council legal review that keeps the contractual and legalities part that we must keep confidential out of public knowledge at that time. Maybe we need our own legal review for that, but not from 5 to 6:30 because I can't make that.
So you would say that you would be satisfied with something like this, make sure I understand, if it included an opportunity for a legal review only for council member or members behind closed doors? And would it be, how would the process, would you make that through Mike so that there'd be an opportunity to group things together and to provide information?
I think so. For general things like preparing a resolution or preparing an ordinance, general things that we just need legal assistance in the wording of, that sort of thing, that would be no problem to go through Mike in the standard legal review. But for the things that we as a council discuss that include contractual obligations, negotiations, the sort of things that we are bound to discuss confidentially before we are ready to act. I think we need an executive session sort of legal review specifically for that if we're going to this process. Otherwise, I think we should be able to contact the city attorney directly like we do now.
Okay, so I think that's clear. Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a couple of things. Firstly, the city of Bastrop is the city's attorney's client, and we are officers of the city of Bastrop. If we don't have direct access to our city attorney, then I think there could be some major problems. Secondly, the taxpayers pay for the city attorney, although I do not believe that the city attorney should in any way represent a citizen for personal legal advice. If there's something that a citizen has that involves the city and needs to have legal advice about that, I think we should really look at how much right the average citizen has to contact the city attorney if the citizen is paying for that service.
Doc, and then, are you?
Well, I'm not through. And the other thing is, if we go to a task force situation, how often does the task force meet, Mike? The legal review?
We keep it down to, would be the second and fourth Tuesday of the month.
If we meet every 2 weeks, then if a citizen brings up something or there is something that has to be looked at, then it could postpone bringing that to council for more than a month, because it would have to go through legal review. That could take up to 2 weeks. Then we have to get an answer. Then it has to be posted on the agenda, and that could be another hold up there. So this could go on for a long time before we can actually get to a problem. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, Doc, and then Gary.
For those reasons, I would suggest that we do wait and bring this back, the resolution, since we're hearing input tonight from council, and maybe working with the manager to make sure that we revise the wording of the resolution, and also look for the report that the manager is going to bring back to us, and then come together to try to provide the solution that we need. But I think after seeing the report that the manager is going to bring us, and if any council member has any suggestions, of course we can forward those on to the mayor or to the city manager, and we can put those in the form of the resolution.
And I'd also like to ask another question.
Gary's next. Sorry, Gary.
I'd just like to say that this is a really, really, really good example of if we had our own in-house attorney, we wouldn't be having this discussion here today at all.
Can I just say, Gary, there's a question here. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Why,
are you
Gary?
yielding to Kelly?
I just asked for
Okay.
Gary to clarify why we wouldn't have.
I had you next. Okay, Kelly?
Because we're going through all these gyrations to try to make our legal process more efficient, to try to clear things through, which might be a policy that we want to have anyhow, but we're really focusing on, who's contacting and how many hours are we using of our attorney's time. If we had a salaried attorney on staff all the time, we would have a lot more flexibility with the use of that attorney.
Kelly?
So, are you envisioning that this attorney we could access this attorney at any time without going through Mike, just like we do with JC, because we wouldn't be charged an hourly charge?
Well, I'm saying that certainly that takes that discussion away if we don't have to worry about the additional hours being logged because we're getting billed by the minute for the time that's being spent. I'm just saying we would make this whole process, the decisions, this entire discussion that we're having, I think would be totally reformulated if we had our own in-house attorney.
I don't see that the solution based that way, because Miss Brown is available to us 24 hours a day, pretty much. I mean, she comes to nighttime meetings. We're talking about somebody who's going to work 8 hours a day, then go to all these meetings and take our calls whenever we call them. We're talking about more than one person there.
I think
if we have
that's-
an in-house person.
I'm sorry. Doc?
I concur. I mean, I think that would be a lot of responsibility to put on one person. I mean, that one person, even with an assistant, having an 8-hour day plus the nighttime meetings and then attending all the other meetings in the community. I mean, I don't know what type of person we would get that would be able to do all that, and especially with what if we're trying to cut costs. I don't think we'd find anyone that would be capable of doing that.
Let me point out that I don't know any professional attorney that works for any organization that doesn't work on a on-call basis. I mean, everybody's 24/7. When you're working for an organization like that, and you're a professional staff member, whether you're an attorney or an accountant or whatever, when you reach the level of non-salaried, you're on call all the time, and that's the way life works. The people at that level don't work by the hour; they work by the job. And so, I think that what's been said in the last few minutes is not consistent with the way professionals work in organizations like ours. I also want to say that my attempt here is to try to figure out some way to save the citizens money. We do spend an awful lot of money on legal fees. If there's a way to reduce those, I think we should do it. Mike's made a very good faith effort with his staff. I'm trying to allow us an opportunity to come under the same discipline. I understand that, Kay wants to talk.
Yeah, I think there's no question that we need to examine our legal expenditures and see where we can cut back. One thing I don't think we should do is sacrifice quality for cost. And what we're having to look at here is that the attorney that we have has 12 years of experience, 16 years. How many years do you have? 16 years of understanding Bastrop, its particulars, its odysseys, its uniqueness, its everything. It's going to be hard to find someone who can understand 16 years of history and pay because we want to pay less. I think we should look at cost too, but there's many other ways we can look at costs. For instance, let's look at how many times our city attorney has had to come to Bastrop to give the Open Meetings Act and ethics speech that she has to give. Usually we give it twice a year. That's what we've been doing since I've been on council. This year it was 8 times because we didn't have compliance from people in the boards and commissions. So maybe there are other ways that we can look to cut back costs instead of just going with an attorney who has no understanding of our community and how we are exceptional and our needs. I don't want to sacrifice quality for cost, but we can find a happy medium.
Gary?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, JC's not going to be here any longer. She's, even with all the experience that she has, I am not dissing JC's service at all. She has provided a great service to the city. I'm just saying, at some point in the career in the growth of a city, you get to a point where you hire a city engineer, which we've done. At some point in the history and the future of a city, you hire a city attorney, you hire a city manager, you hire the staff that you need to get the job done. I was a consultant all my life, and I filled gaps that my clients, to provide services that my clients did not have. And I have, experience that I can bring to the table, but at the end of the day, if that client sees that they're hiring me for more hours and more money than they could bring that service in-house, eventually they'll get to a point where they hire that consultant in-house, and they learn. I mean, JC had to learn it somehow. Every professional has to learn somehow, and so the fact that she knows Bastrop is great, and I'm confident that if we said to JC, hey, would you be willing to be on call going forward, that she would be a consultant to us and help us to train up a new attorney that would fill a gap, and maybe half of the legal fees would be in-house, and maybe half of them would still be with JC's firm. But I'm saying we're going through a process right now where we're spending an awful lot of the taxpayers' money, and it's time to look at, is there a way to do this less expensively and without having a severe risk involved? And I think the risk is minimized by having JC continue to stay involved with a new attorney that comes in, just as we have an in-house engineer that had to learn from the outside engineer that we'd used for years. We would have an attorney that would learn from the attorney that we've had for years. It's a process. It has to happen sooner or later. JC will not live forever. I'm confident of that. Sorry, JC.
I would say that we've had a couple of conversations tonight. One is need more. There's some council members, including the mayor, who would like to see a great deal more detail about what we're spending money on, so we can get a better handle on that. Comparison with other cities about how they spend their money, how much they spend, so forth. Mike says he's working on that, and we'll bring that back at the next meeting, so this will be posted as an agenda item. Well, we also talked about a resolution that Gary made that died for a lack of a second. There may be other aspects of that or other resolutions council members might want to bring forward. So I hope you will think about that in light of the conversation we had at the retreat about if you've got something that you want to propose, put it in a resolution form, figure out a way that it's concise and clear and everybody else can understand it, and we can decide whether to act on it or not. Kelly, you want to speak more?
Yes, Mike, when you compile this report for the next meeting, would you also be sure to include very detailed realistic costs on what it would cost to have a legal department in the city, including the benefits that we do not pay for Ms. Brown right now that we will have to pay, transportation costs, mileage, whatever else that Ms. Brown throws into her rate that we are going to have to itemize so that we have a really fair comparison?
Yes.
And while we're speaking of fairness, may I just ask one more question?
Go ahead. I'm going to go with Gary next.
Mike, just because I think some unfairness has been brought towards Ms. Ray's firm, can you verify that the cities that were used to benchmark these legal services were the same cities that we used to benchmark every other thing? Is that right? Am I right about that?
It was the same cities that we have benchmarked our wage salary, our market studies on.
Okay, thank you.
But, Gary?
Well, I was going to suggest, I think a reasonable way to get what I think would be a more independent point of view than Ms. Ray's report would be to find an attorney that's outside the Central Texas area that serves municipalities and have them look at our expenses, like a Houston or a Dallas that we would never hire. So it won't be a conflict of interest that doesn't have any involvement in our proceedings, and have them take a look and see. I just don't think that this report is a good measure of what the costs of bringing that service in-house would be.
Why not? Okay, she might have overestimated the cost of desks, but why, if we use every single city in that report as a benchmark for every salary we pay in the city, why would that not be a valid report?
But we haven't found another city that's spending as much as we are overall on legal fees. And I also wonder whether we need to have, there's two slots in here for attorneys. I don't think we need 2 attorneys.
I do.
I think what you're asking, you're going to need to.
Well, I think the reason we need 2 attorneys is that we overuse our attorney. That's what I believe.
And Doc, I hate to say this, but
Mike, I'm going to call on Doc because I know you need to respond, but Doc's been sitting there and I missed him, and Willie and I missed him, so I want to give him a chance to speak.
I've worked with Ms. Ray for many years also, not only with through the city here, but she worked with us when I was with the city of Austin, I was with the city of Elgin, and the reporting that she does, because that's her profession, she works with businesses and cities and government agencies throughout the state, and her reputation is pretty strong as to what the information that she brings forward. So, I mean, I trust her judgment. I've worked with her probably 20-something years, and I mean, I really appreciate the information she brings because of her vast knowledge and her network and her ability to work with other cities and to find out the information. I would also suggest that, as I suggested earlier, that we bring this back after because we're not going to resolve it tonight, and we're just going on and on and on with more questions, and I think we need to move forward. But another source, and I think Ms. Ray mentioned this, for us to look at would be our own TML, to look at some of the costs of what other cities are doing for startups. And you can base that and look at what we've got going as well.
Thank you. Mike?
I'd just like to point out to the council, I think we're straying away from the council manager form of government and you're getting right down into the administration. And if you want to administrate the city, then let me go and then you take over. Because that's exactly what you're doing up here tonight. And I've got to draw the line. If we're not going to follow the council manager form of government, then why are we doing it? And I said, to me, it's that simple. I am not going to ever deny a council member. I've got 35 years experience. I think I know what an emergency is to a city and whether or not our legal counsel needs to be contacted. I sit on the TML risk pool. I've seen what happens to cities that don't do that. And the legal costs they've incurred and the liability they've incurred. You've talked about cost, but you haven't talked about any liability expenditures. That's a big factor.
Mike, can you be a little more specific about how you feel like anybody's gone over the line?
Well, you've talked about you want to get down into, you want another attorney to look at. I mean, come on. What do we need another attorney for? I mean, with the breakdown of the cost and you're going to see where the costs are going. And we're trying to implement measures to control those costs. Now, I only brought up as a suggestion because it was brought up at the retreat that you wanted a special time. I just threw that out as an idea. If that time doesn't work, then provide me a time that does. Because, and also, I can't have an attorney, you're going to an attorney all the time, and I not know what's going on, because at the end of the day, that attorney's not going to be responsible. I'm the responsible person.
So, would you help me understand the last part that you said about going to the attorney, whatever?
I mean, if we can't determine by looking at our own cost if they're appropriate or not, what are we up here for?
So I would say that you think that to suggest a way to do the benchmarking other than what you might want to do is going over that line.
Yes, and you're going to see some very glaring things that's going to come out at you.
So let me try this. You and I have had private conversations in your office about the fact that, and I thought we agreed about this. I'm just trying to find out where you think we have gone over our responsibilities or our privileges. We've talked about the need for benchmarking to be apples and apples. We've talked about the fact that it doesn't matter whether Mrs. Ray is looking into it or who's looking into it, or whether or not the benchmark cities are ones that we want to compare with other things we've benchmarked for, but the benchmarking needs to be cities, for example, who have a utility department like we do, who have a water department, who might be near a large city, who might be growing. Those are the benchmark issues that I think are important. I don't think that we need necessarily to use ones that that Mrs. Ray used for something else or that anybody else used for something else, but to suggest that we would, for me to suggest as a council member that we ought to look at the kind of towns I talked about, I don't see how that goes over the line.
Well, the towns or the cities that Ms. Ray looked at are exactly what were the cities composed of. We have an electric department. All those cities have electric departments. They have water and wastewater. That we draw what we do as an operation as a full-service city, and that's what we developed as our benchmark. And the question's been asked, why didn't we use Elgin? Elgin doesn't have an electric utility. We do. So I tried to use cities. That's why we use them for our market study, because cities are different based upon their makeup. So we try to identify with cities that are the same similarity that we have so that we know that we're in the ballpark.
So that would be a definition of benchmarking from your perspective.
Yes, that they have the same operations.
Willie?
Let me see if I can get back to where I originally started when I asked Mike. I want Mayor, wait on your resolution for Mike's report to come back. Mike, let me ask you a question this way, and I think we're going to get back to the same answer. And I know, and you know what we have in our budget this year for legal fees and general fund. It's probably safe to say tonight we probably won't make that. But here's the deal: we got to find out why and where those costs are going that we're not meeting. If we budget $200,000 and then at the end of the year we're paying $400 or $500, we need to find out why. Or you can either take a tougher measure, and I don't think anybody wants to do this, tell you, we're going to budget $250,000 to $300,000 and you go and make it work. I don't think we want to do that. But we need to know and identify where that problem is or problems, and see if we can identify it to bring some of these costs down. I think that's all everybody wants to get to at the end of the day.
Right, but they're not just all Miss Brown.
Well, no. But the point I'm making, if it's realistically not 150, 175,000 for a budget, and we did this in the fall, talk about it at the budget process and say this is why we need to increase the budget for legal fees. But don't do every year. I've gone back and looked from way back 5-6 years ago. We started 140, 150,000. One year we went to 300, up and down. But we end up spending a bunch more than what we budget for, and we need to know why those costs are.
Sure.
Okay, I think I stated about 10 minutes ago what I think is going to come up at the next meeting. I will say that anybody that wants to propose something very specifically, it would be helpful to the council if you phrased it in advance in a resolution form. We're going to move to item D3. I'll call on Chief Adcock about requiring reporting of the City Department racial profile reporting in a required report for 2015. Chief, you got a different looking shirt there. That's nice. I like that.
Different role tonight.
Oh, you're Public Safety Director. I apologize. Steve Adcock, Public Safety Director, City of Bastrop.
Okay. This is the required reporting period. The state requires us to report it yearly to our governing body, and you're the governing body. If you have any questions while we go through this, let me know. It shouldn't take just 5 minutes. This is for all of 2015. The department had a total of 1,876 stops. Out of that, 1,694 were citations only, 660 were arrest only, and for both were 122. We do not keep up with warnings. We actually had more traffic stops than that, but we do not keep up with warnings for racial profiling. The breakdown of the ethnicity on the stops were 203 African. Now let me point out, none of these categories I make up. These are the state categories. I made up the last one, and I'll explain that one in a minute. African 203, Asian 30, Caucasian 1166, Hispanic 467, Middle Eastern 7, 0 Native American, and 3 other. The state does not recognize other. We had 3 other. That could have come from the officer just simply didn't know their nationality, forgot to put it down, whatever. I called the state and asked them, how do I report that? They said, add them wherever you want to. I said, I'm not going to do that because that's falsifying the government document. You tell me what to do. And she wouldn't tell me what to do. So what I ended up doing is I added one of those 3 to the largest 3 groups, were African American, Caucasian, and Hispanic. So I added 1 to each of those 3. Now, if you go online and see our true reporting, it's not going to say other. I know it's probably not a big deal, but I'm going to be transparent and show that those 3 stops were added to that. Now, I went one step further and we're not required to do this, but I wanted to look at our racial breakdown. You got to remember something about our traffic stops. We don't just deal with people inside the city limits of Bastrop. We deal with people all over the state, you know, and sometimes throughout the U.S. So sometimes our numbers are skewed a little bit because we deal with different folks. However, on the left is what the city, not the county, the city population is, and this came off 2013 city data information. We're 63% white. We stopped 62% of our stops were white. Hispanic, we're 21%. We stopped 25%. The county Hispanic number is 32%. So the city doesn't have as large of a population of Hispanics, but it's a lot larger in the county. Obviously, we deal with county folks. Our population is 12.3% black. We stopped 10% black. 1.2 Native American, we stopped 0. Asians, 0.6. 0.01 is what we stopped. And there's the other that I made up. So that's that breakdown. Race or ethnicity known prior to the stop. 6 yes. Well, that makes it sound like, oh, we're racial profiling. No, we know some people when we see them pass us, and we know they have a suspended driver's license or they have a warrant out for them or whatever. That gives us probable cause to stop the person. So there are some times where we actually do know who that person is, and if we do, we have to put down yes. But obviously the majority, 1,870, we did not know what their race or ethnicity was before we stopped them. Search conducted, 145 yes, no, 1731. Was the search consensual? 46 is yes, 99 is no. What that no means is if we have probable cause to search the vehicle, we're going to search. They don't have to give us permission, and they don't have to tell us no. If we have probable cause, we will search the vehicle. So that would be a no situation. If we arrest the people for whatever the violation is, or if they have a warrant, we're going to search the vehicle. So there's part of the no's. The 46 yeses are actually when we ask them, do you have a problem if I search your vehicle? Questions? That's all I have. Told you it wouldn't take long. Does anybody have any questions of me?
Chief, I want to say, all of us get calls from citizens about city services, and you'd not be surprised to hear that I had never anybody call me and say, man, that street is smooth out in front of my house. But I do get calls saying, how come you got a pothole in front of my driveway? I mean, what I'm saying is people call us to complain. They don't call us to say how great things are very often. I never get calls about your departments. It means we're doing a great job, I think, in my mind. Thank you very much for what you did.
Appreciate it.
Mike, you want to comment on anything?
No, I think the chief has done a great job, and I think you're going to see under his leadership and with our new fire chief, just what you've seen here tonight with things that are already happening at the fire department.
Thank you. I want to make an apology on item D4. I had a miscommunication with Councilmember De La Rosa. Thought he said to me at the last meeting that he'd be happy to sponsor the resolution that's included in the packet regarding item D4, but he did not mean that, and I'm going to instruct the city secretary to remove his name from all record, so there's not any kind of implication that Willie was interested in this at all. But since it's on the agenda, can you get that up from there, Colin, or can you have to come up here? I've prepared some thoughts on this and would like to read them and then see if there's any conversation about it. I want the public to be able to see what I'm saying, as I know some people are more visual learners. Council members have a brown-looking thing here, so I'm going to, as Colin gets that up, I'm going to read these thoughts. Okay, thank you very much. This should not.
Before you start?
I beg your pardon?
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Before you start? Is there anything different about what's on the agenda this time than there was on the last packet? Anything changed, or?
Well, I think what's in the backup packet is, I think it's the same as the last meeting, because my misunderstanding was that Willie wanted to propose it. So since it's on the agenda, I'm going to take advantage of that for making these comments.
There wasn't anything in the last pack.
Well, if you want to stop and let Kay look it up, we can do that. But
No, I just don't know why we're doing this again.
Well, I just got through telling you, and since it's on the agenda, I'm going to go ahead and make these remarks. This issue shouldn't be, let me say, we've talked about this many times in this council over a number of years. And so I'm just trying to figure out a way to get some, to provide some opportunity for us to move ahead with something we've talked about any number of times. And a council member said that to me at the end of the meeting, last meeting, and that's one reason that I felt comfortable going ahead and bringing this up. This should not be about removing the farmers market organization from using the city lot where they now sell their products. But it should be about providing the opportunity for other entities to use the property during some of the very many hours each week when the farmers market organization is not using the property. Well, I can't make it work, Colin. You've got it. You should have a copy, Willie, but. Well, we've had a request to turn off the lights. We've got a staff member willing to do that. There we go. Other entities in the city deserve the right to use this property at times when the farmers market members do not use it. Such uses might include such things as multifamily or organizational garage sales, seasonal vendors selling hay bales, which I've seen on the street, truck farmers who are not part of the farmers market group selling their products, artists offering their wares, groups using the building for a barn dance or a birthday party, and so forth. The city property between the convention center and the railroad tracks is intended for future use as an expansion of our convention center complex. For about a decade, can we click it? Yeah, for about a decade, we've given exclusive use of this valuable piece of property and a substantial building to members of a single organization, Farmers Market, at no charge. During this time, of this exclusive use, the city, at their request, spent about $60,000 repairing the building. The city manager has repeatedly stated that despite our having set up the current arrangement on a month-by-month basis, there's a certain danger that the public may think this is permanently a farmer's market and not an important piece of land purchased for a good deal of public money for use by all citizens. And he said that it would be prudent to alter the arrangement to create a better advantage to the city and to make its ultimate use transparent. Until the council makes a final decision about the exact use of the property for expansion of the convention center complex, the city deserves to experience expanded use of this property. The city could also set up a usage program whereby other entities could reserve the property and building when the farmers market is not using it. Reservations might require a minimum fee or free use for nonprofit organizations. For other entities, a vendor program could well produce significant income to allow the city to spend more money on, for example, street improvements and building sidewalks. So those are my thoughts in terms of trying to summarize what has been said many times in this room about the building, the property across the street. So I've been requested by a council member to not call on anybody in the public so we can move on with this. So does anybody want to say anything?
What? You put it on the agenda, you spoke on it, and you're not going to allow the people who signed up legitimately to come up and speak?
I'm saying to you that a council member said to me, I don't think we ought to talk about this tonight.
Well, do you do everything a council member tells you to do? Because they have the right to speak if they followed the rule. Let me try again, Ms. Gilliam. I reported what a council member said to me before the meeting. That's all I'm doing is reporting it. If people want to talk about it, I see Doc Jackson wants to talk about it. I hope he will talk about it. I'm at some point going to call on folks, but I'm reporting what a council member said to me. Doc.
I'd just like to say that I think since it's on the agenda and since you've spoken, if a citizen wants to speak, we should go ahead and allow them to speak. And then I have some comments on the subject, but I'd like to hear from those citizens and then I'll speak.
Others. Jenny Smith Wildebrand.
I'm Jenny Smith Wildebrandt. I'm the head of the Harvest Art Festival. We hold our festival the Friday and Saturday following Thanksgiving at the Farmers Market venue. I'm the niece of Chris Klink and a daughter of Leon Smith. They were both prominent members of the Bastrop community. This event is in our 30th year this year, and we bring in tourism to Bastrop and help contribute to Heads in Beds. We have an understood partnership with the Farmers Market to hold our event at their venue. While we only have an informal agreement, the event is beneficial to both parties, as we bring in many more people than would appear on a normal Saturday. The market stays open during our show as well as the additional day on Friday. We are a small organization, and we depend on the market to assist us in our event. For several years, the market has allocated funds to help pay for marketing and advertising to help bring more people to our event. Our vendors pay minimal fees to participate, which means that there's not really an alternative space for us. We can't afford to rent the convention center, but we have, even simply the use of the current parking space or parking lot for events such as mine and others would bring in revenue that at this time is not being fully recognized. I hope that this resolution in no way requests that the farmers market relocate or close their doors. They provide many valuable services to the city, and I understand that's not your intention. I understand that the city manager wishes to have a fair and reasonable rate to rent this side of the venue for short-term use for civic and personal uses for individuals. But how is that going to be determined? Who decides what a fair and reasonable rate is for each individual trying to have an event? At this time, we don't pay a rental fee to the farmers market because of our mutually beneficial relationship. And would we have to apply to use the space through the city? Would we have to go through the city manager when we already have an understood, contract? And I hope that the council takes into consideration the option of allowing nonprofit organizations to use the space at a free or lesser charge than other individuals just wanting to have events there. I'm simply here today to voice concerns to the council regarding this resolution, and hopefully to allow the farmers market to work in conjunction with others to make a reasonable decision. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Wildebrandt, I know you said y'all have been around 30 years. And
yes.
You're a nonprofit organization?
Because of our relationship with the farmers market.
Would you see other nonprofit organizations being an advantage of doing what you're doing?
Of course. Of course. So, number one, the first example I could think of would be the Scout organizations. A lot of times they hold mulch sales, and they don't have a place to do that. That's something my son's involved in, and we have no idea where to do that. But if we were able to rent a space for a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning, we would definitely do that. And if it was at a fair and reasonable rate to others, then I think that would be fine.
Or for a nonprofit if it were free?
Or for a nonprofit, free.
Okay. Any other questions from you guys?
Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Catherine Neal.
Hello, my name is Catherine Neal. I came here really to express first off that I think what was told about your resolution, that it was incorrect. I think it was expressed wrongly to people, that y'all were just trying to wipe it out and it just not be there anymore. And when I read it, I understood what you were saying, and I actually think that it's a good idea. I don't think that it's fair for them to regulate that property as they see fit. There are other people, such as myself and 2 other farms that I can think of off the top of my head, that are truck farmers. They are seasonal, they have stuff that comes in large bulk amounts and it needs to get sold right then and there. I don't think that them closing the doors off and saying that nobody else can use it was the right option for them. Of course, they need to be there. People enjoy going there with their families and whatnot, and it is a good experience, but I see nothing wrong with this. I produce vegetables, I produce livestock. I would like to use that site. I know hay farmers that would love to take square bales over there, but the people that currently run it regulate it very heavily. They pick favorites and they use almost bullying tactics to kind of continue on the profits for themselves and not letting other vendors come in. I sold there for almost a year, and I left because I didn't like the way that they treated people. So, speaking from personal experience, I think it's a great idea.
Without getting into the internal workings of the farmer's market, you as a farmer, a truck farmer, would you be likely to come over to Bastrop and sell your produce at a time other than when the farmer's market was working, if there was another group of y'all?
Yes,
for example?
of course. That makes sense. I mean, you know, like you said, without getting into too much detail, if you have so many green beans growing, people want fresh produce. They don't want something that was picked and put in a refrigerator and kept all week. They want to buy it right then and there. So if you go and you pick all those green beans and they are ready to go and you need a place to sell it, why couldn't you set up like a monthly or a yearly permit like other places do in Austin so that we could purchase from the city that would benefit y'all? We could come and we could sell it as we please, obviously not on their designated days.
Yeah, right. You could have a Monday group, a Wednesday group,
Exactly.
a Sunday group. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Doc, that's all I have is two people. Doc?
No, and looking at the resolution and the discussion from last time and tonight, I was thinking that it was a way of, eliminating the lease with the farmer's market, and that, of course, is something I was opposed to because of what they bring to the community. If it's an expansion of the use of the property, I mean, I could see that happening as long as the current group is allowed the days that they've been working with. If we're going to expand it and let other groups come in, I could see that happening, but at no way would I be in favor of eliminating what the 1832 farmers are doing, because I've been very pleased with them, and of course, the Harvest Festival has been just something that I have supported for almost those same 30 years. So
obviously, Doc, a resolution of any sort, modified what's in the packet or brought up from scratch, could provide for the elements that you want without, the resolutions in the packet is just an attempt to try to figure out some way to find a new way forward. Certainly not perfect, and certainly needs to be, I would say, needs to be changed. If I were writing it today, I'd write it quite differently. But at least it provides something to work off of, and I think that there's an opportunity here for us to do what you said, to do some expanding versus limiting and exclusive. That's the main thing I'm interested in. Kelly, I see I don't know if I saw you first or not, but I'll go with Kelly, then Kay.
First off, I'd like to say that I'm not understanding the protocol. If this item is on the agenda with Mr. De La Rosa's name, how you can take it over and have it be yours. But that can be a discussion we have later, but I think that was disingenuous on your part. And the other question that I would raise is, I am in agreement with what Doc has said about keeping the farmers market on the days that they operate. If there is a way to expand or change the terms of their lease so that other people can use it on other days so as not to impinge on what they're doing, maybe we should explore that. But we have to look at the condition of that building. We have to look at the liability issues. I believe the farmers market has liability insurance for what they do, and would each group need liability insurance? Would the city cover it? There's some other factors that we probably need to look at before we just willy-nilly say, we've got some land over here, does somebody want to use it? So I would suggest that before we have a resolution about changing anything, that we ask Mike to look into the contractual obligations and the legalities of it, and then come back with maybe some ideas of how we can expand the use without running the farmer's market out of town.
Before calling on Kay, I want to respond to your comment about my being disingenuous. And I want to appeal to the council and get your advice. We have an item, I'm not going to tell you the details, but I had a misunderstanding with Willie. I found out yesterday, that Willie, even though we posted it on Friday, Willie didn't intend for his name to be on this item. I was out of the country. I sent an email to Ann because Willie does not have an email address. I asked her to read him a message that said, "I apologize for my misunderstanding. I will make it clear at the meeting that we'll take your name off of that." But in the meantime, we had posted for all the world to see an item on this agenda. We had a lot of conversation going on, as I think you all know, around the community. We had an opportunity to discuss something that had been posted, and I believe that to say that it was disingenuous for me to allow a conversation and for people to speak about that is to me incomprehensible. So I'm going to ask the council members to comment on that, and I'll start with Doc. Do you think I was disingenuous in what I did?
No, I don't think you were disingenuous. I just think that the way we handle it, I think, is fine because we did allow the citizens to speak. I mean, since you spoke, the citizens were able to speak, and we were also able to weigh in on it. And so, therefore, I'd like to just leave it at that.
Gary?
No comment.
Willie? Okay.
No comment.
Okay, we've heard from you. You want to say any more?
Actually, I do have a comment.
Okay, let's hear from you.
It's not about you being disingenuous, because I can understand why people would think
Let me
that.
stick to that, and you can come back to something else later. When the chair's challenged that way, I think it's time for us to be transparent and talk about it.
Okay. This item was discussed at the last meeting. The item that you put in the packet is exactly the same, word for word, including the enclosure that gives the instruction, word for word. The only thing that's different was changing Willie's name on there. So you must have had some reason to think that something had changed, because you didn't get any motion or second the first time we talked about it. So it was brought back to the council in like a second attempt to run it by. And when Mr. De La Rosa said it wasn't his, I believe the protocol should be, if you want it on the agenda, you place it on the agenda next time under your name, because you've basically railroaded somebody else's item who said it was not theirs.
Well, now we need to talk about me railroading something. Let me say that what I did was I said at the last meeting that I would let it go, and if somebody wanted to make a motion, we'd put it on the agenda. I thought Willie said, put me down for that. He tells me that's not what he intended. Meanwhile, he did not call me before this item was posted. The item's on the agenda. People have showed up to talk about it. People have been talking about it coming up. And I think it's important for us to allow people to have a chance to talk about it. That's what I've done tonight. And if that's a railroad, I don't want to run down the list again, but I will say to you, I don't think that's a railroading, but I think that's being transparent and allowing the public an opportunity to speak on a subject. Now I'm going to call
Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to call on Kay and then Doc.
Okay.
I can understand why people would wonder why you brought this back again. Sometimes things reappear when somebody doesn't like the way they go. But what I would like to say is thank you to Doc for also not understanding this from the resolution that you put in the packet, because the resolution that you put in the packet under Willie's name had a whole different meaning than this other piece of paper that you brought up here, which is much more reasonable. And so thank you, Doc, for making it clear that I'm not the only one who didn't know what this was about. And also, I agree with Ms. Gilliland that if a person's name is by this, they need to stick by it, or it needs to be brought back.
Well, I will say I don't know how to avoid misunderstandings. When we have them, I'll deal with them the best that I can. Doc?
I'm willing to give the mayor the benefit of the doubt. He gave his apology and said that he misunderstood what Mayor Pro Tem said. I think we should just move on and handle the rest of the city business because we're going to move forward.
Anybody else? Gary?
Well, I'd just like to add that I feel like we've wasted a half hour of all the people in this room's time. That's what I think.
Item D5, discussion, consideration, and possible action on a preliminary plat for a colony MUD 1A, Section 1, being plus or minus 45.487 acres out of the Manuel Bangs Survey A within Area A of the Bastrop, Texas Extraterritorial Jurisdiction, or ETJ. Ms. McCullum.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a new subdivision that's proposed within the Colony subdivision. It's actually off of 969. It is within their MUD area of the Colony, and it is proposed for 143 single-family residential lots. With that, staff is supportive of this preliminary plat. It meets the consent agreement with the Colony MUD, as well as Planning and Zoning recommended approval.
Move that we approve.
Second. Any discussion?
What are we approving? I mean, I didn't hear the rest of the motion.
It would be approving the preliminary plat.
Can you restate that, Gary?
Remember when earlier I asked that if we're going to make motions that we make sure we are specific about it so we'll know what we're voting on?
This would be a motion and a second to approve the preliminary plat for the Colony MUD 1A, Section 1, being a plus or minus 45.487 acres of the Manuel Bangs Survey A within Area A of the Bastrop, Texas Territorial Jurisdiction.
Is that your intention, Gary? Willie, did I hear you second it? Second it. Discussion? Ann, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Shep?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliland?
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally?
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'm not going to read all the backup information, which I'm sure you have read on item D6. I appoint Jimmy Crouch to place 3 on the Construction Standards Board. It would be appropriate if anyone wanted to make a motion to affirm the appointment.
I second.
I have a motion by Willie, second by Gary. Discussion?
Yes, I would like to thank Mr. Crouch for filling out his acknowledgement that there could be a conflict of interest, and I would like to say that if there is any work on the Arts Guild construction, that Mr. Crouch recuse himself, if he is still working for Big D, which is involved with the construction of the Arts Guild.
Yeah, I would imagine that goes without saying in terms of our ethics ordinance, and he will, I don't know if he's already had training in that, but I'm sure he will if he hasn't. So, Kelly?
I'd just like to say that I've heard nothing but good things about Mr. Crouch, and I think he's probably an asset to the Construction Standards Board, as you pointed out, Mayor, so I am also in favor of this. He also serves on the Parks Board, though?
Yeah, I've explained, I think I explained why I thought he needed to be on both. The main reason was that I've reappointed him because the chairman of this committee has, what word can I use? He's beseeched me to put him back on that board. He really needs him. I think that this is one of the cases where a person is particularly qualified and needed to be on 2 boards.
What's his qualification for the Parks Board?
He's on the, let me start over. I appointed him to the Parks Board because, I've explained this twice, but I'll try it again. I think I asked him to serve on the Parks Board because he applied for both the Parks Board and the Construction Standards Board. I didn't have a place on the Parks Board when I appointed him to the Construction Standards Board. Almost within a month or 2 after that, there was a vacancy. And I felt like that he could serve the community more effectively on the Parks Board. So I asked him if he would resign from the Construction Standards Board, then I would only have him on 1 board. And he agreed to do that. I appointed him to the Parks Board. Y'all approved him. I'm assuming y'all saw his value on the Parks Board as well as I did because you approved him. Subsequently, there was a vacancy on the Construction Standards Board of someone who had kind of similar knowledge as and training and education as Mr. Crouch had. And after that vacancy went vacant for quite a while, the chair of that committee, Charlie Schrader, asked me to please appoint him to this one as well. I talked to Mr. Crouch about it. He said he was willing to do double duty. So the unique qualifications, it's not about the Parks Board, although he's well qualified. The unique qualifications are being a present member of the Parks Board, to have him double up on a board where we really needed him for his talents that others didn't seem to have, seemed to be one of those unique situations where a person would serve in two places.
Okay, well, this is not a normal thing for our boards, though. We mostly have people only on one, right?
A couple of meetings ago, I listed who I think are the people that are serving on two boards. I don't have that in front of me, but as I recall, they are Lisa Patterson, who serves as the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. She is also elected by the Planning and Zoning Commission to serve on the Historic Landmark Commission. And the other person is Dan Hayes Clark, who is a member of the I will deal with this in a second. He's on the Zoning Board of Adjustment, is the chair of that committee. He was asked by Mayor Orr to come back on the Historic Landmark Commission that I think he was one of the original members, because the board was floundering, and the Mayor Orr felt like it was essential that Mr. Hayes Clark come back on that board and serve on both of them. He appointed him to the second one, and he now serves on both boards, having been approved by the council in both cases, and I think those are the only other two, so this is a rare situation.
I'd just like to point out there's 3 other people that would like to be on the Parks Board, and you might want to consider at some point if 2 boards for one person is actually representing what the citizens are trying to do. We have 3 other people that want to volunteer. I understand if you might consider this maybe at the next mass board appointments.
Asking him to resign from the Parks Board? Well, let me say what. If you don't want to vote for him on both boards, I will keep him on the Parks Board. I'm trying to accommodate a board that's in great need of his service. And so I would, if you feel that way, I'd encourage you to vote against Jimmy on this one.
I don't want to vote against him. I think he's a good board member. I don't want to vote against him. I'm just asking you to consider the other people that have applied at some point.
Anybody that applies for any board, I consider.
So these 3 people that have already applied didn't get consideration?
Everybody that applied for the Parks Board received consideration from me for their service. Everybody that applies for any board receives consideration for their service by me. Did you get the impression I didn't consider them?
I don't know the timing of when they applied versus when you appointed. I'm just saying we have one citizen who has volunteered. He seems perfectly qualified, but we have other citizens that also want to volunteer, so please keep that in mind.
If somebody else had volunteered with his qualifications, or volunteered at all for the Construction Standards Board, can anybody help me understand?
I would like to call for the question so that we can move forward, please, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion by Doc, a second by Gary, that we end conversation and debate on this motion to confirm Mr. Crouch. So if you vote yes, you're voting to quit talking and vote on the confirmation. Is that clear? Ann, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Del Rosa.
Yes.
Councilmember Schiff.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliland.
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally.
Now we'll vote on the confirmation. I have appointed Jimmy Crouch to the Construction Standards Board. This will be a vote. A vote for aye will be to confirm that appointment. And you can call them in numerical order if you'd like.
Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliland?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally? Yes. Councilmember Schiff?
Mr. Grassel? I'm sorry, did everybody vote? Mr. Grassel? I want to apologize to you. I had this mixed up with a previous deal, and I misread it. I know that you wanted to speak on item D5, and I'm going to ask you to come speak and say what you want to say, and I'll give the council an opportunity to reconsider their vote after you talk. This is item D5. Yeah.
I'm David Grasso, and I've been living on Farm to Market 969 for 25 years. It's a farm to market road, and the MUD they're talking about putting in there, they're planning right now on paper for about 150 homes. That's a part of it. They're a developing company, and there's enough acreage there, according to my calculations, and I was a math teacher. There will be over 3,000 homes before that entire ranch land is developed. I'm very opposed to this because that's a 2-lane road, and I will not be able to get loads of cattle or hay in or out very easily. It's a road that connects Bastrop to Austin. And as a 2-lane road, if each of those homes has a family, there's probably going to be 1 or more vehicles for each one of those homes. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be going in and out of those driveways and onto that road over and over. We're still going to have emergency vehicles, school buses, Meals on Wheels. We're going to have a lot of traffic there. And I think that the traffic problems are going to be very heavy and very frequent. I also want to say that I'm opposed to it because I don't think my place will grow more grass, but I do know my taxes are going to go up because of that. I don't want my taxes to go up. They've gone up exponentially here every single year. And so I'm opposed to that. And I really want to say we need to be able to remember that there are a lot of farmers and ranchers in this area that need those roads, and that their taxes are going to go up because of this project. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Would you wait just a minute? Melissa, would you come talk to us a second? Can I ask a question? Absolutely, that's what we're here.
Mike, are we the only one that's going to review this subdivision or this plat or anything?
We do coordinate with the county, but
County going to look at this as well?
we give it to them to look at, yes, sir.
Okay. Is this part of a long-range deal that we worked out with the colony when we first set it up, or how does that kind of thing work?
Yes, sir, it is. It's part of the colony master plan, which, just give me 1 second, I'll be glad to pull that master plan up, and it can give you a little more detail on the overall layout of the property. The subdivision section that's in question is located it's located roughly in this area off of Farm to Market 969. Mr. Grass, I believe your property, it's right here, is that correct? Just south of, and so it's the 143 lots that was talked about tonight are located here. The property is considered a mixed-use development, which will include commercial properties and uses, as well as potential school sites and other densities of housing units that vary from, fairly dense, which would be roughly in this area, to larger estate lots similar to what's in the older part of the colony. And so there is varying density, but it is part of an overall master plan that's been
years ago, we city accepted.
Yes, sir. In 2004, I believe is when.
Mike, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to, at what point would a TIA come into account here?
They have a TIA submitted that was
Okay.
submitted in 2005, and it will be updated at some point to reflect the revised master plan. It is a little different from some of the other master plans, but it is a much less dense master plan than what was originally approved. And so they do have a TIA that reflects that denser development.
And for you, sir, and for the audience, TIA is a traffic impact analysis to take an analysis of what impact the development is going to have on streets adjoining to it. And it may call for certain upgrades. As Mr. Brandon has spoke, it's somewhat dated. Some things have changed, so they're going to have to update it. But it will be reviewed by the city engineer and have to meet his and my approval to go forward.
As well as TxDOT. TxDOT also
Yes, that's right.
And requires any improvements in the right of way.
Paper that, I don't know how I got it, because they sent it to someone who didn't really ever exist at a different address. But the lots that are on the paper that I have are what I would consider very, very small lots. So I'm saying that when you're talking about the density being mixed or something, I think that for this acreage, there's an awful lot of homes, and it seems very dense to me, because some of those lots are 40 feet wide.
No, I believe the minimum lot width was, they can go down as little as 45, but none of the lots were less than 55.
I think it's going to be crowded, and 969 is a very long road to have to re-add lanes and turning lanes and lights and all that. I just don't necessarily think it's a project that some people contribute.
Willie?
I was just going to ask Mike, as far as our part, as far as the TIA, is that some kind of policy that we have, or is that some law that we see this further down the road and then ignoring that information up front before we actually make either whether it's a zoning change or something like we're dealing with tonight?
It's part of our subdivision regulations, which is part of the planning process. And I just don't have it in front of me, but when the gets to so many trips that's being generated from the subdivision, a traffic impact analysis is required. And that's usually made, a determination is made at the preliminary planning stage, because they still have to come back to council for a final approval. And they'll make that determination if it's required to be submitted as part of the final plan.
Well, sir, I believe you are right. They're putting these small lot homes on the backside of that colony where they're going to come out from Sam Houston and out into 969. So they're not going to have, they don't have the small lots in the colony. They're going to be on the backside of the colony, which is out in your neck of the woods. So you're right when you say there's going to be a lot of density with the small lot homes.
I think that, I may be mistaken, but I think the relief on this in terms of the traffic, as opposed to another issue we've been dealing with lately, is the state in terms of improving Highway 969. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. So I guess with this, since this municipal utility district's been in the planning and implementation stages for the past 10 years, that with that, when we look at TIAs, and they would submit an update, honestly, to it. But you're right, they are proposing their overall density of the entire municipal utility district, i.e. number of lots, is going to be reduced, but they are proposing, some smaller lots as well as larger lots within the development.
Mr. Gressling, I appreciate whatever consideration you can give to me as presiding officer of this meeting for having failed to call on you. But I'm going to give you an opportunity to prevail. The parliamentary procedure would be if a person who voted in the affirmative on motion D5 wanted to reconsider this, to move to reconsider so the council could vote again, you would make a motion that we reconsider item D5. Is there any such motion?
I'd just like to point out to the council, and city attorney will correct me if I'm wrong, but if they have met the requirements of our subdivision regulations for a preliminary plat by statutory law, we have to approve.
Yeah, and you can say that if we vote on it again, but right now it's a question about whether you want to reconsider it. I don't hear a motion, Mr. Grassley. I appreciate your expressing yourself to us and for your whatever you can give me in forgiveness for having not called on you while the vote was under motion.
Thank you, sir.
Item D7 is consideration, discussion, and possible action on a request from the Bastrop Homecoming Committee for a variance to secure 8.02001 section of the City of Bastrop Code of Ordinances to allow for the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages during the Mayfest Hill Disaster Relief Rodeo event scheduled for May 13 through 14, 2016 at the Mayfest Hill Park located on American Legion Drive. Is it Mayfest Hill or just Mayfest, Mike?
I've heard referred to as both, Mayor.
Okay.
Item D7 is found on page 100 of your packet tonight. The reference section of the ordinance prohibits the consumption and use of alcohol in city parks. This is a standard request that we have had in the past from both the Homecoming and other groups that have utilized the rodeo facilities up there. We have never rejected a variance as long as they have produced the liquor liability insurance that is required by our underwriters. So I would recommend that the variance be granted, and they have agreed in their letter on page 101 that they will meet our insurance requirements.
There's a motion by Willie, second by Kelly. Mike, I don't think I'm out of order in asking this. Did we talk at one point about regularizing this sort of a motion so that the staff could deal with it, or is it impossible to do that?
We just got to amend the ordinance. You have directed it. That be just my decision because we just more or less pass it, and we just need to amend the ordinance to give the authority to me.
My observation is this is going to pass, and that every other one we've ever had that came before us has passed, and it's a pretty routine thing that might not need council action, but that's just my observation. Is there any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
The reason and I'm not trying to be a stickler, and I'm sorry about that I asked that we make clarification on our motions because there are people watching that don't have a copy of the agenda in front of them, and they don't know, and this is public business, so that's why I've been asking that if we make a motion that we be specific so that people will know what we're voting on. We know what we're voting on because we have it in front of us and people in the audience, but there are people on television and other places that don't know what we're talking about. And if you just say, I move, they have no idea what we're talking about, and that's, I think, an injustice to them.
Okay, the motion before the council is to grant a variance to the Bastrop Homecoming Committee to section 8.02001 of the City Bastrop Code of Ordinances to allow for the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages during the Mayfest Hill Disaster Relief Rodeo event scheduled for May 13th through the 14th at the Mayfest Hill Park located on American Legion Drive. That is the motion before the council.
Y'all ready to vote? Is that consistent with what you moved, Willie?
Consistent with his first comment that I made a motion off of.
Ann, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Del Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliland?
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally?
Yes.
Councilmember Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Thank you. Item D8 is, I think this is by me, but I don't know that needed. Let's see. I'm going to hold this in my hand, Lee, until I call on you so I don't forget. I don't know that a motion, a resolution is necessary. What I may have, I don't know what Ann and I were doing over the internet between two continents, but what I would like to do is to raise the question of moving, getting moving on our process of creating a destination marketing. I should have said organization. I think that's the right word. And I laid out some thoughts about process. And the critical thing for me at this point is that now that we've gotten Mike working on the Destination Marketing Corporation renewal or a revision, that we get to moving on the Destination Marketing Organization. And I don't have any preconceived notions about what it will be. I have a passion for making sure that we come up with a process that allows us to work through it in a orderly, timely manner and engage the community as fully as we possibly can. So I just laid out my thoughts on the backup of this item and wanted to get it on the table so we could talk about it if anybody's interested. And I think I see you want to go? Okay.
Yes, Mayor,
and then Gary.
I would like to pull this item because if you recall at the retreat, we voted to ask our city manager to go and research this and come back with some suggestions along the lines you've talked about yet, and he has not had a chance to come back with that report. So it would seem to me like we can cover all this at the workshop that we also voted to have, and we don't need to spend time on it tonight before we have followed the process that we voted for, which is having Mike come back to us and having a workshop.
How do we stand with that, Mike? I don't remember that, but I'm sure Kay remembers it correctly.
Well, there was two stages to your motion at the workshop, as I recall. The first one was to the deal points that the council had come up with to meet with the Hyatt and get the Hyatt contract in order with a 90-day notice. And then once we got that accomplished, we would move into begin working on the DMO. I hope to, I'm meeting with the Hyatt next Monday. So I'm hoping in 2 to 3 weeks to have a revised contract as per your direction, and then start the process of evaluating and possibly bringing to the council a request for proposal to go out for professional services to assist the council in this endeavor.
You would rather wait until we've got a signed contract with the Destination Marketing, the Bastrop Marketing Corporation.
That's at least what I understood what the council wanted. If I misunderstood wrong,
No,
okay.
sir.
And my purpose is simply to get us moving as soon as we possibly can, because I thought there was a sense of urgency on the part of the council, but if there's not any sense of urgency, I'm perfectly willing to wait. Gary, I think you wanted to speak.
I was just going to say what Case said, which was we agreed that he was going to put a plan together. He was going to look at what's out there and bring it back to us, and I'd like to see that.
I believe he's correct in saying there were two things. That's the second part in the contract.
Microphone.
I'm through.
Can somebody else say that, because I couldn't hear it?
I think
I was agreeing with what y'all were talking about.
I think Willie's saying that's what we ought to do. But Lee, I think we're going to move on from this, but I want you to have a chance to speak before we do.
My name is Lee Harrell. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce as the chair of the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee. Hotel occupancy tax became a top priority for the Chamber in the latter part of 2015. At that time, our committee put a great amount of time into understanding hot tax law and reviewing the history of hot tax in Bastrop. Then we put out a call to our membership and began in-depth conversations on the topic. From December through early January, we met with city council members one-on-one to get an even better understanding of the current hot tax situation. With the exception of you, Councilman Jackson, we had some conflicts with schedule, and I apologize for that. As a result of those meetings, we began a thorough discovery process. The Governmental Affairs Committee has met every 2 weeks since then in a workshop format. In between our meetings, the Chamber staff, as well as members from our committee, have gathered input from DMO organizations across the state and met with some of the top professionals in the DMO industry. The Chamber agrees that it is time to create a DMO for Bastrop. I want to commend the mayor and the council for keeping this topic on the table as a key issue to be addressed. The economic impacts of a successful tourism, convention, and hotel industry in Bastrop are important to realizing smart growth for our community. There is one undisputable truth that we have learned through our discovery process. It is crucial to the economy of Bastrop that this DMO is set up properly from the beginning. The Chamber has completed our discovery process and moved into a phase of information sharing. Over the next 2 weeks, we will be meeting with community stakeholders and reaching out to our entire membership to share our findings and discuss a process for creating a DMO. At this time, I'd like to request to be put on the agenda for the next council meeting. If permitted, the Chamber plans to return to the council with a presentation of findings, including a recommendation for the steps needed to be taken and a timeline that allows for ample community input. Based on our engagement with others who have been down this road before us, we believe there is a process that will result in the creation of a DMO by the end of this year. Thank you.
Okay, Lee, I appreciate what you said and the work that y'all are doing.
Thank you.
I think you're certainly going to be one of the important entities that we want to hear from, that will be involved in whatever process we come up with. But you've also heard the council say that we and the manager that we're working on a little different timeline from yours. So I can't imagine that we won't all want to hear what you have to say. I'm not even sure that Mike wouldn't want to hear it, as soon as you have it. But we're not going to post any items until we have a report from Mike. But I assure you that if you will stay in touch with me, I'll make sure that whether it's a posted item or not, that you have an opportunity to lay out your plan, as we will provide that opportunity for everybody in this community. So I thank you for your interest and involvement in this, because I think we're all on the same page here. How, I think we're all going to California or something. How we're going to get there, I don't know, but we're going to do it together. So thank you very much for coming tonight. We'll look forward to more. Yeah.
Can I ask when we can expect that from Mike?
Yeah, what did you say, Mike? Do you think 2 or 3 weeks? Is that what you said?
The 2 or 3 weeks on the high contract, then once we get that behind us, then we'll move right into that.
Well, I think if you stay in touch with me and Mike, I'll get you with Mike and me. We'll keep you informed as best we can, as we will all other citizens, especially the council. So, again, we're going to have to follow our own process, and it may take a little while, but we'll keep you posted.
I would just ask, is there any harm in the Chamber presenting a body of work that we've been working on, that we started on as a result of communicating with you all?
Yeah, I thought it wouldn't hurt for me to present what I presented tonight, but the council wasn't very amused with it. So I think probably we better wait until council's ready to hear it, and I'll let you know when that is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item D9 is consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding approval to award a construction contract to Facilities Rehabilitation Incorporated for State Highway 7195 water line replacement project. Mr. Brennan.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much. Yes, this project relates to an issue that we encountered that has to do with the new overpass that's going over Highway 95. We have an existing 12-inch water line that crosses 71 roughly in front of Popeyes, and it connects the water system from the north side of 71 to the south side. And unfortunately, its depth is shallow enough that it conflicts with the proposed retaining walls that would be installed as part of the overpass project. And so we put the plans together and sent them out for bid, and we received 7 bids, with facilities rehab coming in the lowest at $91,370. And so we're recommending that we award the contract to facilities rehab. They just completed a recent project for the city, and we're confident that they'll be able to do this work.
And for the record, we were very satisfied with the work that they did, and they complied with all the contract requirements.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of the awarding the contract to Facilities Rehabilitation, since they are the lowest bidder, for the project at Highway 71 and Highway 95.
Second.
And I take it, Mr. Parliamentarian, you think that was clear enough, clearly stated? Is that correct?
I hope so. I'm reading it from the agenda.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jackson and a second by Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa. Any, Katie, you want to speak on this? Gary has a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there any way to get the state to help us in that? Is that not something that the state?
The state is telling us we have to do it because we're in their highway and we're holding.
It's their right of way?
Yeah, that's the way it works.
Shucks.
Sorry.
I'll be sure to ask again. But,
Going around might be pretty costly. Is there I think there's an intention to vote here. Ann, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Shipp?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilliland?
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally?
Yes.
Thank you all. Thank you, Wesley.
thank you.
Item number D10 is consideration, discussing, and possible action on the first reading of proposed ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the budget for the fiscal year 2016 in accordance with existing statutory requirements, appropriating the various amounts herein, repealing all prior ordinances and actions in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date. Ms. Waldron.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have a few amendments we've brought before you. The main one is the creation of the Arena Fund and establishing a budget for that fund, which that money will be transferred from the HOT Fund. The resolution to create the HOT Fund was in a consent agenda item, and we have added the Arena funding as a Tier 1 funding item. If you have any questions.
You want us to vote on the item on page 116, is that correct?
As well as the other adjustments in the budget that she
Yes.
shows on page 113, 114, as well as 115. And I just would like to say that this is the first phase of what is needed and can be done for the remainder of the fiscal year. We're going to make some improvements up at the rodeo grounds to encourage more usage, especially like having the warm-up arena, and we need new equipment to properly prepare the arena for events.
Okay, I don't know how anybody would make a motion on this because there's a bunch of pages, but I have read the agenda item, which I think spells it out pretty well. We have referred to a lot of words on page 116 and some others in between. So I'm hoping that someone moving the agenda item might satisfy it.
I would recommend.
Oh, go ahead.
I just recommend that the council approve an ordinance amending the budget for the fiscal year 2016 in accordance with existing statutory requirements, appropriating the various amounts herein noted, which the other pages reflected, repealing all prior ordinances and actions in conflict herewithin, and providing for an effective date.
Now, okay, Doc, what do you think about that?
Oh, that's exactly what I was hoping.
And seeing no one approaching the microphone, I'll ask the city secretary to call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa? Yes. Councilmember Gilliland? Yes. Councilmember Shipp?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
First reading. Right. Thank you. I think, and we can put this on the consent agenda for the next meeting, and if somebody wants to pull it off, they can. I've been informed that there's no need or no way the city can do anything to alleviate concerns expressed under item D11. We will move into an executive session. The Bastrop City Council will meet in a closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Section 551.071(1)A, and Section...
That's the only item I have to discuss. Oh, two. I have two B. I do have to bring the council update on the purchase of property.
Do I not need to read E1?
Yeah, A and B, for sure, we have to talk.
Okay, I'm still going. And Section 551.0712, consultation with attorney. Section 551.072, to deliberate concerning the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property owned by the city and Section 551.074 personnel matters to discuss the following: Section A 551.0711A and Section 551.0712, consultation with attorney concerning potential pending, threatened, and/or contemplated litigation or claims, including but not limited to water permits and supply, Pine Forest Unit 6 and/or 2 matter. I'm sorry, it's important that the citizens are able to hear this. It's a public announcement of a private session. I need the public to know what we're talking about, so I appreciate your silence for a few moments. I think I was at Pine Forest Unit 6 and/or 2, matters upon which the attorney has a duty and/or responsibility to report to the governmental body concerning the same and/or any other matters posted on the agenda. And B, Section 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, regarding the purchase, exchange, lease, disposition, or value of real property, and Section C, Section 551.0.74, personnel matters, city manager. And I don't need E2, that's later. We stand in executive session. And we will reconvene into our regular session. Mr. City Manager, is there anything we need to be dealing with?
We discussed consultation with attorney, very clear matter. Council had a deliberation regarding the city manager, but no action was required out of executive session.
Okay, there is no action needed. Anybody want to make a motion? Gary and then Kelly. Gary, how do you vote? You moved to adjourn, right? I got that right, Doc? Okay, he moves. He says yes. Kelly? Yes. Okay. Yes. Doc? Willie's absent. 4-0. We're adjourned.